Hi, I'm Lyle, and this is a series that I want to start talking about my physical and mental health and my journey that I had over the last couple of years. I know this is usually more of a let's play channel, but this time the game that we are playing is more so I don't just have to look at the camera all the time because that will be weird for me. We are just painting some pictures by numbers. This is of some famous art because that was the one that I could find. I know the picture isn't that beautiful, but they will get better over time, I think. I wanted to start this series mostly for me, I guess, just to get it all out there and to have a record of sorts, maybe. I'm not 100% sure I'm ever gonna upload this. Maybe this really is just for me. But maybe if I do upload it, there will be someone who can relate or who this might help. And that would be beautiful, I think. Talking about mental health or health also in general, I think is important, just so people know that they aren't alone, which is something that I have learned over the last couple of years. And so I did a video 1 year ago where I talked a bit about what had happened to me and a bit about my mental health, but I do want to have a series that is a little more structured, where I tackle physical health, where I tackle mental health, also what type of illnesses I have, how I work with them, what tools I personally use. And please do not understand this as any sort of advice. Everybody needs their own coping mechanisms, and everybody has different things that help them. I am not a health professional of any kind. This is just from a patient's perspective. And in this first video, I want to go over how it came to be that I got a pacemaker at the age of 26, which is quite young to have a pacemaker. Most people who have them are way older, and I would have never guessed that I would have to need one at the age of 26 for almost 5 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. And these videos aren't easy for me to make, so if they seem a little rambly or weird, or if there are weird pauses in between, don't hold that against me. These are real memories and traumas that not all of them have been dealt with yet. So some things might be easier to talk about than others. But I just feel the need to get it out there. I don't know why. It's just a thing. We will start painting this picture, and I will go over what happened. In my late teens, early adulthood, I started to get these weird heart palpitations that would start for no reason that I could discern. And it wasn't like I was running and my body was going. It was like I was, don't know, cleaning the bathroom or something, and then suddenly I would get this weird tightness in my chest, and then for like a moment I wouldn't be able to breathe, and then I would get these weird heart palpitations, like my heart would start going like crazy, and I did not know why. I did not know what was going on. But it only ever lasted for like a minute or two, and usually when I sat down, they would stop. So I didn't think much about it. I honestly, at first, I thought probably everybody just has this sometimes. It would only occur every couple of months. I don't know, 3 times, 4 times a year. So it wasn't anything that I really noticed or paid much mind to. But then in 2011, I had a phase where I would get it more frequent. It started getting more frequent. Instead of every couple of months, it would be every couple of weeks. So then I thought, okay, this is getting a little weird, so I should get that checked out. And I went to the doctors, and my doctor at the time told me it was probably because I'm a very thin person and I probably just contract sometimes and would squeeze my heart unintentionally, and that was probably what was causing it. And I thought, yeah, makes sense to me. And it still wasn't that concerning. I was like 21 at the time. So then I lived with that a couple of years. But then in like 2015, it started to get really, really bad. Still, it would only occur maybe like 3 times a month. But the palpitations would start to get worse, and they would also start being there for longer. So instead of maybe like 1 to 3 minutes, they would go on 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes even longer than that, even while I was lying down, which was usually what made it stop very fast. And that started to not work as well anymore. And I worked at a bookstore at the time, and I remember having one incident where I said I just have to go to the break room, lie down for a second, my heart is going like crazy, I don't know what's going on. And it wasn't going away. It was going for like 15 minutes. And I thought, damn, this has to be something, I don't know what this is. So I said to my boss, I'm gonna go to the pharmacy, maybe they can tell me what to do, or maybe they just have something, because there was a pharmacy just down the street from where I worked. So I just went there. I waited in line like you do, with a heart that was racing like crazy. When it was my turn, I went up to the counter and I said to the woman working there, my heart is going like crazy, I don't know what's going on. And she looked at me, and I guess that she saw like my vein like going, because my pulse was so high. And she said, okay, sit down, I'm gonna call an ambulance. And I was like, I don't want to get an ambulance here, it's not that bad. But I said okay, reluctantly, and I sat down, and the second I sat down on the chair that was there, it was gone. Like, the palpitations stopped. And I was like, okay, it's fine. You don't have to call an ambulance. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. I'm just going back to work. And she said, okay, but you need to go to a doctor. You need to get that checked out. And I thought, all right, I already know what it is. Like, my former doctor told me it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that serious. But I thought, okay, this is starting to get a little more intrusive into my life, so I should have someone take a look at it again. So I went to my doctor. I had a different one now. He said we should do a 24-hour ECG. So just have like this machine and all the cables on you for 24 hours, so we can see maybe if the palpitations happen, then that might give us a clue about what's going on. And I put that on, had it for 24 hours. Of course, it didn't happen in that time. So I went back. He looked at it and said, okay, there isn't anything super obvious, but he still said he saw some irregularities in my ECG. And he sent me to a specialist. He sent me to a cardiologist. Said I should get an opinion on this, because he was not a specialist. And I said, all right. So I get an appointment. And in between that time, going from my doctor to the cardiologist, I had one instance of palpitation that was going on for an hour. that was the longest time that I ever had, and it scared me to freaking death because it was not stopping. My heart was racing and racing and racing, and it was so scary. And you know, it's also physically taxing when your heart is going like that and your pulse goes up to like, I don't know, 190, 200, 210 for an hour. That's not easy on your body. So when that finally stopped, I was like, okay, I cannot wait to get to this freaking appointment. And I was very relieved when that finally rolled around and I could tell my cardiologist what was going on. He pretty much immediately said he has an idea about what it might be. And he checked out my heart, ultrasonic, listening for any weird noises in there, and he said, your heart, as I can see it, as I can hear it, is totally healthy. So for, at that time, a 26-year-old, it's totally fine. There's nothing that he could see, but he still said it's probably an AV nodal re-entry I don't know how to say this word in English. Tachycardia? So an AV nodal re-entrant tachycardia. I hope that's how you say that in English. And it basically means, I hope I'm explaining this right, you have like these cables at your AV nodes that lead to your heart, and you need like a wire to get the electricity to where it's supposed to be. And when everything is going correctly, then your heart beats very regularly. What happened with me was I essentially had an extra wire there. So at one point, for whatever reason, there was an extra wire, and that created a loop. So the electricity would go and go and go and go and go over these two cables. So my heart couldn't figure out which stimulus was the right one, essentially. And that was making my heart go so fast because there was just a loop happening that would sometimes not stop for a long, long time. And he said that is probably what's going on. It's very treatable. It is very common in teenage and young adult women. It gets done 3 times a day in every clinic that has a cardiology department. It was supposed to be very safe. And he said that was probably it. We just had to confirm it. So he needed an ECG from when that was happening. So I did another 24-hour ECG. Of course, it didn't happen. And I was starting to panic, thinking he would think I'm crazy and he wouldn't believe me. But that, fortunately, was not the case. After the 24-hour ECG didn't work, he gave me this little machine that I could carry around with me, and that when it would start going, I just had to hold that to my heart and it would record, and then I could send it. Then I could send the recording to him via phone. And I could have it for like 4 weeks or 5, I think it was. And then the weeks went by, and of course, nothing happened. And then at the end of the 4th week, I remember that it was a Friday and that I had Saturday off. I was getting ready for bed, lying in bed, and it started. So I scrambled to get my little machine and recorded it, then sent it to him via my phone. And I was ready to go to bed, thinking he would like call me maybe Monday or Tuesday or something. I had already turned on the sound on my phone because I was about to go to sleep, and then I saw that he had tried to call me. And I was like, And then he called again. And I will never forget that the first thing that he asked me was, "Are you alone right now?" And I said, "Yeah, I live alone." And then he asked me, "Have the palpitations stopped? How was I feeling?" And I was like, "Yeah, they have stopped. I'm okay." And he said, "Yeah, it is definitely what I thought it was gonna be, but your heart palpitations are very fast." So he was afraid that I was maybe gonna pass out alone in my apartment at the time. And I was like, well, that has never happened to me. I was doing fine. And then he said, "Okay, we need to get this done rather quickly. We need to get you an appointment for surgery. And what you do is when you have this AV re-entrant tachycardia, however you say that, is you do an ablation, which is essentially you burn away the second cable that leads to your heart." So I was like, all right, if it has to be done, it has to be done. And of course I was scared, but I just went to sleep that day. And then the next morning, I called my parents, and they were like, "Are you freaking crazy? You're coming home right the hell now, and you're staying here." I was like, "Okay, but it's not that big of a deal. Like, I am fine," because at the time it didn't really register that how scary all of this really was. It just hadn't sunken in yet. So I drove home, and then we had to call different clinics. They said that they had an opening already the next Tuesday. So it was from Friday over the weekend on Tuesday. And I was working at Monday when they told me that. Or maybe it was the week after. I don't really. That might also be might have been the week after. But I got the appointment, and I was essentially just packing all my things right away because we had to go right away because I had to check in a day early, so I had to check in on Monday, and the surgery was already on Tuesday, so I had to leave work, pack all my things, and get to the hospital. I had a very competent doctor. He explained to me and to my parents what was gonna happen, what he was gonna do. He was very experienced. He was actually one of the first doctors in Germany to ever use that treatment in the late 80s. So he was trained, definitely. And he said, "Yeah, we are doing this procedure very, very often, and there are very minimal risks." I get prepped for surgery the next day, and then I get to the surgery room. And for that procedure, I had to be awake. That was what this clinic did. Other clinics do it differently, and I would never in my life will I ever have a surgery again where I am awake. You can frigging bet on that. That was not good for my mental health. I will go into those issues in a later episode, but I was awake for that surgery, so they only gave me a local anesthetic into my thigh, which is where they put in all the cables to get to my heart, because the biggest vein goes through your thigh, and they had to get into my heart. So I think it was like four cables or something, and they had to trigger the palpitations so they could see where exactly this extra cable was located. They did it, and he came out to me and said, "Those two wires are extremely close together." And he said he had to be extremely careful not to hurt anything vital. And I was like, all right, I mean, I'm here. It's not like I can say no now. And he got started. And I remember there was this very big monitor to the left of me where it showed the inside of my heart in black and white, like in like very, 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 very zoomed in. So I could only see like the little electrodes that they had pushed in. It was still a very surreal experience. Seeing the inside of your own heart, I don't think anyone ever should, unless you're very resistant to trauma. And so he was working. He was pretty much constantly talking with his assistants, and then he was talking to me and asking me if I was feeling all right. And during the surgery, I was just staring at the ceiling, wishing for it all to be over as quickly as possible. And I also remember that I had a clock in my vision. So I would just see the time go by, and they said the surgery would take maybe like 45 minutes with prepping maybe in an hour. And I saw the time go by, and then 1 hour passed, and then 2 hours passed, and we were still in surgery. But he said it was he had to be careful, so that was that. And then he was done. I got brought up to my room, and I only found that part out later. He never told me that. He told that to my parents. He said that when they triggered my palpitations, my heart had gotten to a rate of 260. And he said my body could have probably lived with that for another maybe 15 to 20 years, and then I would have had a heart attack, and nobody would have ever known what had happened. He said I would have probably died around 40, maybe 45, which is scary to know. But he was very optimistic. He said that my heart right now would be much slower, because since those two wires were so close together, he also had to burn a little bit of my normal, of the good wire, but that would go away. That would regenerate on its own in the next couple weeks. So I got out of hospital. That I even had heart surgery didn't really register, but every time I told someone that 2 weeks ago I had heart surgery, everyone was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, yeah. Like, all the doctors said it wasn't a big deal, so it wasn't a big deal to me. At that point, at least. And then the weeks went by. I went to checkups to my cardiologist, and every time I was there, we had like an appointment every 3 to 4 weeks. He was like, "I can't see that your heart rate is improving. It's still far too slow. I'm not sure what's going on right now. It doesn't seem like it's healing." Which got more and more scary the longer that went on, and then he at one point just said, "We are probably gonna need a pacemaker." And I really, really didn't want that. That was even scarier to me than everything else that had happened until that point. But my cardiologist was always very casual about it. He was always, "Well, if you need it, you need it, and then everything's fine again." And then there was this whole back and forth of, do I really need a pacemaker? Could I just live like I was living with like a slower heart rate? And he said, like, in the night, your heart is missing like 6 beats at a time. He was very much of the opinion that a pacemaker was needed, but he called around and he said, it's not bad if your heart only if your heart beats this slowly. There are people that have this from birth, and they live healthy, happy lives. It's not that bad. It would be bad if I ever like went out, fainted or something. Then it meant that my body couldn't handle the slower heart rate. And then of course I was about to have an important math test for university. And the day before, because I was so nervous, I was starting to feel very lightheaded. And my parents later told me that I, for like half an hour, was completely out of it. I don't really remember. I was still walking so they prepped me up, walked me around and got me to do things, but I don't remember any of it. And then the next day, when I was supposed to go to the test, I fainted in the bathroom. Luckily, I was able to call my mom before, and I just sat down, and then just everything went black. And my parents drove me to the cardiologist again, and he said, yeah, okay, we have to get you into the hospital again. You need to get a pacemaker. So that was a thing. I got driven to the hospital in an ambulance, and they sent poor guy, a doctor still in training, to explain to me my totally out of it parents at that point that the surgery that was about to happen the next day. And I just broke down crying because I was getting a pacemaker at the age of 26. And he did not know what to do with a mom and a daughter sitting there crying, and a very upset dad who at one point just said, I want a real doctor in here. He like Karen'd all over the place, but I think that was, at that point it was necessary. And then funnily enough, there was a whole team of doctors suddenly around us explaining to us what was gonna happen. And they calmed us all down, and one of them was the one that was gonna operate me, one of them was one that was gonna sit in. And that kind of helped calm us all down, at least a little bit. It was still scary. And then I had the pacemaker installed inside my body. It's around here, so in my chest, on the right side, with cables going from it to my heart, making it beat normally. And thankfully for this surgery, I was not awake. I was sleeping. As I said, I wouldn't do a surgery on my heart awake ever again. And then we had the whole thing of you are not allowed to get up for a certain amount of time. You have to lie in bed rather still, which is very annoying and very anxiety-inducing if you're not allowed to get up. Even to go to the toilet and stuff, that's not fun. And also, in the first night, you will have pain. A lot, actually, because they just cut you open and put a machine inside of your body. And then, like 4 days later, I went home to my parents at the time. And they had said, like, it would probably take, like, 2 or 3 weeks at home and you will be fine. I was not fine after 2 or 3 weeks. I was at home for, I think in the end it was 9 weeks. And over those 9 weeks, I also lost my job. And then sat at my parents' house, lying on the sofa mostly, not being allowed to move my arm a lot, because you have to hold that still so you don't, at the beginning, you don't pull the cables back out of your heart, since they because that can happen at the beginning if they haven't really attached themselves to your heart. You have to be a bit careful about that. Especially as a young person, because you tend to move a lot more than older people. The 9 weeks later, I was supposed to get to check up. And I went. And the guy did all his tests. And then he said, something isn't right. The battery life it's gone down far too much. Probably one of the electrodes in your heart didn't really attach itself right. There might be some scarring there that is obstructing electricity to move right. We probably have to do surgery again. And I remember getting out of that room, going to my dad and saying to him, this is the worst year of my life. It's not stopping. And then, of course, it was exactly what he had said. The electrode wasn't attached right, and then I had the choice of, are they going to do it again? It had to be done in the next 6 months, I think, or they wouldn't have gotten the damaged electrode out of my heart again easily, or would I live with the damaged electrode and get a new pacemaker maybe every 4 to 5 years? And I said, hell no. We're gonna get this. We're gonna try this again. I'm not gonna do surgery every 3 to 4 years. Not a chance. We got an appointment for... Oh, I got an appointment, not we. Why do I keep saying we? I got an appointment for January the next year, so January 2017, and I went again. And then I got surgery again. Had the worst experience in that night, because that was the first night I had a really, really bad panic attack because I wasn't allowed to get up. But there was a very nice nurse, and he calmed me down some. He was a good guy. And then I went home again a couple days after. Had to wait another 8 weeks to find out if everything was fine. This time, thankfully, it was. So pacemaker was going fine. All the electrodes had attached themselves right. Like having 3 heart surgeries done in the span of 1 year, even if they are mostly routine surgeries, they weren't complicated or anything. They weren't super intrusive, but still, that was taxing. Not only physically, but also mentally, which I did not really realize at that time. So I was pretty much stuck in limbo, having to move in with my parents again, and I'm so thankful that I have as close a relationship to my parents as I have, and that they went through all of this with me, because I do not know what else I would have done if I had to be alone this entire time. I honestly don't know what would have happened with me. But it was still, I had gained a little bit of independence, and now all of that was lost again. With the pacemaker installed and everything. I felt like I was a different person physically, because everything took so much out of me, and I was out of breath far more easily than I had been before. And I brought that up with my cardiologist, but he kept saying, I can't see anything wrong with your settings. We did tests and everything was fine, but I just kept saying, I just feel wrong. And we only got that sorted out about 1.5 years ago, when I went to the clinic again and had the doctor who operated on me, so who did my surgery. He looked at it again and he said, yeah, I think I know what's wrong. You are on settings for old people, but you are not old. Your heart needs more stimulus. You need to be allowed to have more stimulus from your pacemaker. And then he phoned a guy who was working for the company who makes my pacemaker, so the brand, and then they had a back and forth talking about what settings might be best for a younger person like me. And after that, I felt so relieved because everything was back to normal again. I could go on runs, I could go on walks without getting out of breath. I finally felt like everything was like they had told me, like everything was somewhat normal again, even though of course I have certain things that I'm not allowed to do anymore. I have to take care when running around outside that I don't get too close to magnets, for example, that kind of stuff. So, you know, the disability side of it. But I was at least finally able to move again at a pace that felt right for me. And so at least the physical things were getting a little bit easier. But nobody had really thought about that for 3 years, 4 years. So I was on the wrong settings for 4 years and nobody noticed. And I always thought I was going crazy thinking that something was wrong because nobody could see anything wrong. But after that, it was, and it is becoming easier. It wasn't a great experience, and I have lost some confidence in doctors because there were a lot of them with very different opinions and very different outlooks. And especially in surgery, you often feel like you're just number 4 on their list today. Like you're just... He has installed 3 pacemakers already and you are just the 4th one, and it's just a weird, a little bit dehumanizing experience that I wish would be handled differently. We are about done with the painting, which is good because that is also where the story ends for now. I will have to get surgery again in 2 years, summer in 2 years. The pacemaker will have to be replaced because the battery is running out. And that's scary to me because these surgeries have been traumatic. There's no other way to describe that. It is not a very nice picture, this one. I hope the next one will be a little bit more pleasant than a... Ugh. But that is the story of how I got a pacemaker and the 3 heart surgeries that I had in the span of 1 year. And the next time I will probably start talking about the mental impacts this all had and what happened between the time of surgeries and when I finally started to go to therapy. That is at least my goal. So, now you know a little bit more about me, maybe even a little bit more than you wanted to know. I don't know. But if there is anyone that this could ever help for whatever reason, then this video has fulfilled its goal, I think. So, thank you for being here with me. And I don't think I will upload these regularly. They're probably gonna be very irregular, but I do want to do a series on it. So thank you for listening to my weird ramblings. I love you very much. Bye bye.